What's going on, musical geniuses? Today we are going to do Ethics Part 2. Previously on Ethics class, we asked the question, is it better to be good or fake good, right? Is it better to actually be good inside of yourself like the Zhanzi, or is it better to have a good reputation? That just reminds me of the Taylor Swift album, Reputation, right? Awesome. Best musician ever. So, what are Plato's brothers' argument for this kind of enemy position where fake good is better than real good? They say they don't believe it, but they really want to get into it so that they force Socrates to make a really good case for why virtue is good for everything else, but it's good for the soul itself. And so they give us these really nasty arguments. Number one is they say, all right, let's look at the world. Let's look at all of society. Everybody is just kind of like waiting for other people to be evil all the time. And that's why all of our rules are the way that they are. We expect everybody to be faking. We expect liars. We expect people to take advantage of the rules. We expect them to pretend to be good, but we expect them to like sneak being evil whenever they can. So all of our laws exist to protect ourselves from this, right? The other thing is power. Power corrupts. And he has this story of the ring of Gyges. As soon as you couldn't see somebody, not seeing them would lead immediately to them being evil. We're only good because we could get caught being evil because people can see us and remember us. Hey, I remember that person. And it's our reputation that suffers when we do bad. So Plato's brothers think we're only trying to protect our reputations, and that's the only reason that we be good. They also give us two examples of extreme fakeness and extreme realness. But they twist these examples a little bit by saying the person who's extremely real, everyone's going to think that they're a bad person. And the person who's extremely fake, they're going to be really good at faking it. So in the extreme examples, the person who is very good at faking justice, you imagine this person getting a lot of different rewards. They probably have a wonderful relationship with people who, would only be with somebody with a good reputation. They probably have a lot of success in business because they're able to get business loans and everybody who wants to work with them because of their great reputation, right? The good person who seems bad, however, you will see that person suffer the most because all of their relationships are going to be bad because nobody trusts them, nobody likes them. So being good within yourself, which one would you pick? Would you want to be good within yourself, or would you want to be somebody who is receiving a bunch of benefits, right? Most people, Plato's brothers seem to think, would choose that you would want to be the fake good person who's getting all the rewards rather than the real good person who everybody thinks is bad and you're getting all of the negative stuff from having a bad reputation. The other thing is that culture tells us all of these ways that we should seem good. And I gave you a bunch of book examples of people who want to tell you how to manipulate others. Never Split the Difference and Influence are two good examples of this. How to Win Friends and Influence People is another one. And if you can go back 500 years ago, you get The Prince. The Prince was a gift to an Italian prince who was told how to get power and keep it for a long time. Finally, we get to the religious realm and we find out that the gods are corrupt and corruptible. Separate arguments. The gods being corrupt means if you pay attention to what it is that they do all the time, they're always getting in these crazy, stupid disputes over very small things, and they're creating a lot of suffering for no good reason. Them being corruptible is that basically gods can be bribed. You just have to perform way back in the day, human sacrifices, but it turned into animal sacrifices. And this is something that we see in our world with giving fruit or namdang to Jiao Ti. Jiao Ti doesn't want you to live a good life or be a good person. Jiao Ti just wants some namdang. So all of these arguments together that the laws tell us that people are going to be this way, that power corrupts, and that pretty much everybody would become, a bad person as soon as they have the power to. And then these two extreme examples of the real good person and the fake good person. And we see that the fake good person has the better life. Culture is telling us all the time to seem good, and even religion. The examples and the belief structure around what makes the gods happy and what makes the gods unhappy seems to be corrupt. Okay. So Plato's brother's argument basically says that there's a lot of evidence that there are benefits to faking good, that we should want to fake good. So what is Socrates' answer to all this? Well, Socrates' answer is the whole rest of the book. It is too hard to see virtue in a person, right? It's hard to describe. Let's look for it in the community. And before we accuse Socrates of just basically dodging the question, and it kind of seems like he is dodging the question a little bit, let's take it seriously a little bit. When you ask the question, what is a good person? Please define a good person. Tell me not just what they do, but what is the quality? What does it mean to be just? It's very difficult to do. I think what you would say back is, give me a situation. What is the right thing to do? And you're like, I don't know, in what circumstance, like in what situation, what's happening, what kind of choices do I have? And then you can see what the right way is based on the context. So Socrates is trying to say, okay, let's just have a continuing context where we have society. So let's build a community, a society, a perfect republic, and look for justice in the republic. How can we build a system of agreements between people that's going to make justice happen? And then he thinks in that way, we end up answering the question. So the republic, famously, is led by philosopher kings. These are the wisest people. They have all the power, and they are not allowed to have any of the property. Just below them are the soldiers. They're necessary to defend and protect the state. I said before that outsiders are, this is before globalization. This is a couple thousand years ago. So the idea that there would always be some kind of an enemy that's coming to get you is just going to be 100% true. There's always going to be an enemy that's coming to get you, so you're always going to have to defend your borders. We don't necessarily live in that world now because we have this globalized situation. Yes, there are conflicts, but those conflicts are happening with like rules of war. If you think about the border between Thailand and Cambodia right now, a lot of the discussion talks about what are the rules of war? Are landmines okay? No, they're not. Well, back in the day in war, there were no rules of war. You just run in and wipe everybody out. And if you're not ready for that to happen, that's going to happen to you. The Bhagavad Gita spends a lot of time kind of like justifying the spiritual goodness of the soldier, because you couldn't really have a society without warriors. You couldn't live without defending yourself in some way. And you could argue about whether you think that that's true or not. But Plato seemed to think that it was. And then you have the business people, right? They produce the needs for the state, the goods and services. This is business. And I always say, if you look at our culture now, the business people are on top. And Plato didn't seem to think that that was a good idea. Socrates is giving us in the world where the wise rule. Where does that happen? Almost never, right? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, was trained philosopher, and he was actually a very good ruler. He was also a warrior. But almost never do we have wise people ruling. We usually have business people ruling, or we have military people ruling. Okay, so what is this republic, and what does it mean? Why would you set up society like this? It would be to get the best justice. And if we have people who understand wisdom and justice and righteousness and virtue, and those people are set up in a way where they cannot be bribed, they cannot be incentivized towards evil, you should get a perfect society. When right under them goes the military arm, they're the ones commanding violence. Violence is not going to happen for no reason. And then below them are the merchants who are allowed to enrich themselves, but they don't have any actual power. What do you think of Socrates' perfect city here? Do you think that this would actually be good? Would it create the best? Do you guys disagree with me about the business people? Do you think the business people should be on top as they are in our society now? Do you think that that creates the best of possible worlds? And if a bunch of smart people were ruling the world, it would be worse? What do you think? I obviously agree that having smart leaders would be really cool. We haven't tried yet. It would be very interesting. All right. So another way of looking at Socrates' answer of this, what is utopia? How can you say what is right for a human soul? The answer is a city. Well, maybe if you look at Socrates' answer in another way, it's showing you how to rule yourself. Now, imagine the city is yourself. Wisdom would be leading you. The spirit would be going to war for your mission, and the appetites would obey. Not a lot of people, but one way of looking at the Republic has been to say that the city that he builds is a metaphor for how you would set up your life so that justice can thrive. And if you think about it this way, most of us are set up with the business people on top. And the business people would be, I want to eat, I want revenge, I want sex, I want violence, I want silly humor, right? The appetites are what are driving us forward. And sometimes we get ourselves into situations of conflict. So where the spirit is going to war actually for our appetites. But wisdom, if we cultivate it, is a better leader of human beings because it could take you towards something that is going to help you for a long period of time, not just help you for, I want to eat right now, or I want to eat this piece of chocolate right now, right? So I'll fight you for it. Do you think that this is true? Do you think that this is how the world is being set up? Is it being set up for the spirit? Up to you. So the perfect city is a metaphor for the perfect self. And like I said, this is not something that Plato said straight up, but it's one way of looking at it that's kind of interesting, and I think it's useful. So Socrates' answer also contains this idea of, would it be better for the soul to be good, not just fake good, but actually be good? And one of his answers that we get a little later in the book is that justice is the internal harmony in the soul. You know what harmony is, right? It sounds good together. So in this case, the soul is not conflicted. It likes to do good, and so it is good. It's not acting good. Does this make sense to you? Is this something that you would say, okay, yeah? A lot of your answers that I've looked at have sort of hinted towards this. Would the fake good person benefit more? Maybe for a time. But if you really are a bad person and you have to pretend to be a good person all the time just to maintain all of your relationships, you can't actually enjoy those relationships because you're not actually being yourself. Also, if you're pretending to do good things and you don't feel the inherent goodness in doing the good things, you're just pretending throughout your whole life. So when you take these actions that are supposed to be good just so people see you doing good, you don't actually feel the benefits of that. You're not like, I'm doing something good, I judge myself as good because I'm doing this thing that's good, and I feel good because all of this stuff is in harmony. No, you're a liar who's pretending to be good so that you could sneak some evil later, and you're not sneaking the evil right now, so you're not happy right now. Socrates argues that actually being good and doing good gets you happiness, but being bad and doing good, you're not enjoying the process, right? So this starts to get into this idea of authenticity. And authenticity is the idea of really being yourself. And that always sounds good, especially to Westerners when I say authenticity. But is it good? I don't know. What do you think? Is authenticity good by itself? Let's look into it. Do you think that it's possible to fake justice? And I mean this long term. Or wouldn't you fear being discovered? Would you enjoy the lying, or would you be like, man, I don't want to be lying. I want to get out of this situation so that I can be with myself, so I don't have to be faking anything anymore. There are some people that would enjoy the pretending. They would enjoy deceiving others. Should those people be authentic? Up to you. Write about it. So that's kind of the question. And there was a book that I was looking for. I couldn't find it, but it was The Case Against Authenticity, the case against finding yourself. Because so much of what you find in Western pop psychology, pop philosophy, is about finding yourself. And there's an assumption that when you find yourself, the self that you find is going to be good. Do you believe that? Do you believe that all of the people in the world who are on the journey of trying to find themselves, when they find themselves, what they're really looking at in that mirror is going to be all good? What do you think about human nature? This is a huge philosophy question. The philosopher Martin Heidegger had this idea of authenticity, and when you're not engaged in authenticity, you're getting sucked into das Man, the they, right? The herd, as Nietzsche would call them. You have society kind of forcing you into conforming, and you don't really know who you are. You're just doing things to satisfy other people. You're not seeking intrinsic rewards. You're seeking extrinsic rewards. You don't want to find your own truth. You want to seek external validation. Everything I'm saying right now as a Westerner and somebody who believes Western stuff, everything I'm saying sounds bad. You shouldn't be trying to let society judge you and worry about what society thinks. You should instead be worrying about what you think yourself, living by your own lights. Do you think that that's the right way to live? I don't think the answer is obviously yes. No, I don't at all. I think that this is maybe a problem, especially for some people. Let's think about it a little bit more. Is it true that all souls are good? Would finding yourself always be good? So, what do you believe about human nature? If humans are good, human nature is good, and that everybody who finds themselves is going to be finding something good because they're going to be finding the true human nature, and that true human nature is good. One of the most famous social contract theorists, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, believed that human beings were good and that this complicated society, property ownership, all of this stuff complicates us, and it's society that kind of destroys the noble, savage nature of a human who would otherwise be good. And a lot of people go back to this kind of myth of the noble savage, and this is a human who's living in a small band, right? There's 75 of us, we're going around, we got sharp, pointy sticks, we go and we pick berries, we put all those berries together, we run around with a pointy stick, and we get a pig, we cook a fire, and then we cook up that big pig, and we get a bunch of berries, and we get a bunch of carrots and vegetables and stuff, and we get a hold of that, and we make this big giant feast, and everybody's equal, and everybody gets some of it, and it's great. And when you think about property, how could any of us really have property when we're moving around all the time because we have to chase the food around? So being a hunter-gatherer in a tribe before there is farming, running around, you don't have inequality because we all need each other to survive. If I throw a spear and I whack some pig, I can't eat that whole pig. It's going to go bad. So I have no choice but to share. I mean, it's just the best thing to do. So the way that being a hunter-gatherer would be should have made us good. And this is the idea of like kind of a fundamentally good human nature. As soon as we start to engage in agriculture, I start to really care who my children are because I want to pass the farm to my children, not somebody else's children, because I start to worry about things like my bloodline, and we have surnames. You're going to get my surname and you're going to carry my legacy into the future. And also there's all this stuff. I don't want to give it to a bunch of strangers. I want to give it to my own child. Rousseau argues that this makes us bad. Society is bad and human nature is good. Do you believe in a story like that? Well, What about the opposite story? The idea that humans are bad. So it may be true that humans are bad, that we are like the animals. And if you think about all of the things that the animals want, they just want food, protection, sex, warmth. They want very simple animal things. And if they don't get them, they're going to fight you for them. Now, civilization pushes us towards all of these other goals that don't involve violence. Famously, the level of violence in society is falling. Steven Pinker makes that argument. He even sees World War I and World War II, and says, if you really pay attention to it, that is a less destructive, violent situation percentage-wise than what we've been engaged in throughout most of human history. So as society is evolving, society is pushing us away from violence. And I don't know how you feel about violence. Maybe violence is natural, and maybe it's not the worst evil that we can create. But there are really a lot of people who think that we're basically beasts. And if we were to be left to our own devices, we would be doing beastly things. But society civilizes us, and it takes us away from a human nature that's worse. In this case, society is good, and human nature is bad. What do you think, right? I mean, it's more complex than that, right? Let me expand this a little bit. If humans are good, if you really, really believe that human nature is good, on the extreme end, you can end up naive. You can end up as an idealist. And what I mean by that is you think all humans are good. Anybody who's not being good is witnessing a moment of distortion, maybe from society, maybe from something else. But if we could just get back to our nature, all of us would be good. Is that true? Could it be true? It would be really beautiful if it was true, to the idea of utopia. Now, in the red, if humans are bad, on the extreme, you get a cynicism or a nihilism. And this is basically looking around at everybody else and saying, really, everybody else is selfish and trying to get one over on me. And if we have nice relations now, it's just a temporary calm before the storm. And it's just because I'm useful in some way. And as soon as I'm not useful, this is not going to be good anymore. And the thing that's really rough is you find yourself in a situation where that seems true often. And if you find yourself in a situation where that seems true often enough, you start to get cynical. And cynicism leads to nihilism. And nihilism would mean that you don't believe in anything, especially not anything good. So in both of these situations, you can have an extreme that hurts you. If you believe that human beings are too good and you leave yourself too vulnerable to other people, you're probably going to get hurt, because there are elements of human nature that are selfish to the point where if you leave your guard down too much, you might be in some trouble. However, if you're walking around like this all the time, never ever able to trust anybody, is that the way to live the best life? This is a complicated philosophical question. Your answer should be your own. I can't tell you the answer to this question because it's way too hard. Game theory says the best way to manage this problem is to be open and trusting. Reasonably open and trusting, but still open and trusting. Not stupid, but open and trusting and willing to work together until you get burned. And when you get burned, you're supposed to retaliate or close off or something like that. But when somebody comes around, it's time to forgive. Game theory says this. And this is way oversimplified, right? But it's the idea that we should be open to working with people. We should retaliate when things go wrong. And we should forgive when it's time to forgive. That's just game theory. What do you think? All right. So overall, what do you believe about human nature in total? What is it? Is it good? Is it bad? Are we all essentially good? Are we fallen, corrupted by original sin, and only seeking salvation? Are we corrupted by society, or are we improved by society? This is the big question that we're left with, right? What is human nature? If you believe that human nature is good, what do you believe about society? If you believe society is good, what do you believe about human nature? Can they both be good? Up to you. plenty to write about already, isn't there? Let's go on. So a question that comes along with this is often the question of like, how do I get someone to love me? How do I get other people to accept me? And this is something that you see in the internet forums all the time. The question of like, how do I get acceptance from other human beings? Well, if I'm confident, then I can just be myself, and that's going to work. Because I am confident in myself, I can just be that self, and that's going to be fine. But if I'm not confident, I feel like being myself is not going to work. It's not going to be enough. So this authenticity, this being myself, it doesn't just depend on whether or not you're good. It depends on what you think about yourself. And as we know, there are a lot of people out there who are not necessarily good, but who really do believe in themselves. And we also know a lot of people who are really, really good and who really don't believe in themselves. So our vision of who we are really matters in this situation of picking whether or not we should be ourselves. So how idealistic are you about human nature? Do you think that being yourself is right for everyone? And you can see my picture here. I have America's serial killers, right? Is it true that they are not quite being themselves, or are they being exactly themselves and those selves are psychopaths? A psychopath is a real thing. Perhaps it's 1% of people or something. If you're a psychopath and you get the message, I should be myself, well, what does that mean? Right? Or you get about halfway to being a psychopath if you feel in your heart that what you want to do is cause other people big problems. Should you be yourself? Should you be the self that wants to go cause big problems to others? Or should you accept the civilizing powers of society and be changed by it? This idea of individuals and conformists is very complicated because in an individualistic society, we're screaming at everybody to be themselves. And should we be able to say to serial killers, oh, no, not you, not you. That's for everybody else. That's not for you, though, right? And in these collectivist situations, aren't they doing a better job of trying to hammer all of the differences out of everybody when the differences can be this bad? What do you think a human is? What do you think human nature is? Write about it this week. Okay. Overall, though, for non-serial killers, the question of how do you get somebody to love you is usually be yourself. But somewhere in between a quote-unquote normal person and a serial killer, all of us have these things about ourselves that we're not super confident about. There are little elements of us that maybe we're not proud of or we know don't work very well with other people, and we might want to change these things. Why, though? Do you want to change it to fit into some box that involves other people, or do you want to change yourself in order to be a person who you love? So this idea of being yourself turns into, over time, becoming yourself and training virtues over time, becoming who you want to be by your own lights. Okay, what are these things that we want to train? What are they called? In Western philosophy, we have the idea of virtues, or konatam, right? And these are things that are good about you. And they are really difficult to define. In the Republic, we have this idea that virtue is so difficult to define that you need a whole book about it, apart from the book about justice. So what is an example of a virtue? Normally, it would be something like courage, or even humor, or creativity, or generosity. These are all virtues that we can cultivate. What is the opposite of a virtue? Well, sometimes it's called a vice. And in Buddhism, it's called klesha or kilet, right? And our phones are full of gateways to vices. Here you have the 7 deadly sins from Christianity: lust, gluttony, wrath, pride, envy, greed, and sloth are all available on the phone. And this graphic is at least 10 years old. So the ability to just sit there and rot on a smartphone has evolved since the birth of this meme. The Buddha taught that life is suffering, right? And that we suffer because of our ignorance. And through training the mind, we can stop suffering. That's just a short version. The ancient Greeks agreed with this, and they thought that you can train virtue by actually trying to change your life on purpose. Socrates died about 400 years before year 0, which would be the birth of Jesus. This is the Thai year 144, so like a little bit after the Buddha. Plato outlived him long enough to write all of these books and become the most popular philosophy writer of all time. And they believed that the senses lie and true wisdom comes from reason. It is thinking about this kind of stuff in your mind that you're going to find virtue. And of course, living it in your life, which they call eudaimonia. Now, Aristotle came a little bit later and started to articulate virtue in a very positive way. Rather than just asking questions about it, he was trying to tell people what it really was. So he was born in the Thai year 197. Socrates was the teacher of Plato. Plato ended up teaching Aristotle, and then later on, Aristotle ended up teaching Alexander the Great. So a lot of really famous ancient Greek thinkers who knew one another. So the virtue theory that we get from Aristotle is not really about systems. And again, when asked, how do I live with justice? Socrates came up with this gigantic metaphor of a city in order to answer it. He wasn't ready to put forth a system that tells you what the right thing to do all the time was. So these other systems like utilitarianism and libertarianism that we'll talk about, we need to talk about them, they do give us rules. But Socrates thought that virtue was more important than rules. If we can focus on being good people, the right actions will follow effortlessly. That was the idea, right? And this is similar to what we're getting from Socrates, where the idea is not to fake good or to act good, but to be good. If you are being good, when the situation comes up, you're going to know what to do because you just do the thing that's natural to you, and the thing that's natural to you is going to be good because you are good. Now, how do you do that? He got all philosophical about it, of course, and he thought about the proper functioning of an object. And the proper functioning of a bandage is to stop your bleeding. The proper functioning of a cup is to hold your water for you, maybe even be easy to clean. Proper functioning of a microphone is to get sound into a computer or out into a PA to make things loud. When it's not doing that, we worry. Objects should be doing their jobs. But what about the human? How is the human supposed to be functioning? Well, he gave us these two ideas. We're the rational animal and we're the social animal. So we are thinking. That's what we're capable of doing that other animals aren't. And we're also forming these complex relationships, working on these relationships and making them better. So if we're using our smarts and our minds to make our situation better, and we're working on our complicated relationships, we're not ants, right? We're complicated. Then we're properly functioning as a human. So he thought that ethics and virtue had a lot to do with these special human powers. He gave us a great version of the middle path as well, and this is Aristotle's golden mean. A virtue lies between vices of excess and deficiency. What in the world does that mean? Let's define these terms. A virtue is a good thing, right? Maybe kunatam. Vices are bad things, like maybe klesha, kilet, and these would be like greed, pride, envy, shallowness, whatever, right? Excess means too much. Deficiency means not enough. So if we look back at this, a virtue, a good thing, sits between two bad things. One of them is too much, and one of them is not enough. So let's look at some examples of this. On one side, you have corruption, and on one side, you have legalism. And in between there, you have something called integrity. Look at it in terms of government, right? Corruption would mean if you have money, you could just buy your way out of any kind of a problem. Legalism would be a situation where you know what the right thing to do is, but you're looking at the law and you're like, according to what's written on this piece of paper, I can't help you, even though you're a good person and you're doing everything right. If I read this piece of paper, this is not what the piece of paper says. Somewhere in between would be a willingness to sometimes break the rules for the right reason and a willingness to not break the rules for the wrong reasons, right? That would be integrity in between there. Foolishness is never judging at all, and judgmentalism is judging way too much. In between, you have discernment. You turn on your judgment at the right time, and you turn it off at the other time. If you don't care about somebody, that's not love. And if you are pushing them towards things that are negative, that's also not love, right? Just because you don't want to stop them. All of these have great, I'll go to temperance. Licentiousness means you just do whatever and you have no discipline whatsoever. And then strictness means maybe you're going a little bit too far over the top and you're missing out on life. Temperance is somewhere in between. And then courage we're going to talk about right now, because courage is one where you can really see two things. Number one is that you can have too much of it and you can have not enough of it, but you can also see that it matters who you are. It doesn't just matter what is the right thing to do. So there's one more reason that we can't just have a system. So if somebody was getting mugged, somebody was getting robbed, what would you do? Now, this should matter who you are and in what situation it is. If you see some dekwan trying to take some purse from some old lady and you are Buakao, maybe the right thing to do is to go over there and Jalake Fathang and, kick that dekwan and take back the purse and give it back to the old lady because you're Buakao, right? You're like you're Rotang, you're some kind of warrior. But what if you have a broken leg and you're far away and you're like, I want to help, but I have a broken leg. I can't go over there and Jalake Fathang that guy. Maybe just yelling and screaming and pointing and kind of like starting to go over there on your crutches and just kind of like starting to make a scene. Maybe other people are going to see too and they're going to look and maybe somebody's going to grab them because you spoke up. Maybe that is already courageous because maybe this guy might have had a gun and started firing at you. You never know. Like you're stepping out. What if you're the only person who is going to like earn money for your kid and you need to feed your kid? How much danger should you put yourself in? Courage is always a question of what is the cost of doing right versus what is the cost of sticking your neck out there. When are you courageous? When are you stupid? When do you have the ability to help without much risk? And when do you have no ability to help and a really big risk? It's a very big question that you can never really answer. It depends on the situation and it depends on who you are. This is where Aristotle is brilliant on virtue, I think. And this is why you have to kind of know ahead of time what is right by just being it, because you don't know what the right thing to do is until you're in the situation. You should know your own abilities, your own limitations, and do what's right based on those. What about honesty? Can you be not honest enough? Sure. Imagine a situation where your friend has an interview, like some kind of job interview or an interview for a scholarship or something, and they just woke up out of bed and they have a bunch of boogers in their nose and they say, "How do I look?" And you say, "You look great." Oh, the interview is going to be looking at their boogers the whole time. You probably could have told them, "You look really good, but you should check your nose. You got something in your nose. You got some bats in your cave, bro." Right? And then they go into the bathroom and pick those boogers out, and then they go and talk, and their words shine through. They're beyond the boogers, right? That would be the right amount of honesty. But what about too honest? What about your friend just wakes up and they look really terrible and they're on their way in? You say, "I have an interview right now. How do I look?" And you're like, "You look ready." That might be the best way to do it because you're still being honest, but you're not telling them what you really think because you don't want to crush their spirit before they go in there and try to perform, right? It always depends. And this is from Interstellar, where the robot has an honesty setting, and he says, "What's your honesty setting?" And he says, "My honesty setting is 97%. How come it's not 100%? And the robot says, humans are not able to handle 100% honesty. And the humans just laugh, and then they just go on with the movie. I thought it was pretty funny. What about generosity? This is another one. Can you be too generous? Yeah, I think you can, right? You can give away everything to the point where you have absolutely nothing, and you can be in big trouble because of this. There's a story from this guy, Ram Dass, who had just got famous for being kind of one of these psychological, spiritual characters. And somewhere into his career, he ended up getting sick, but he was constantly giving away everything that he had. And he got sick, and then he realized, oh man, I don't have anything. I've been giving everything away through my whole life. What do I do now? And luckily his friends bought him a home to live in and continue to do these spiritual retreats. So he actually got saved by kind of the consequences of his generosity. So the question of, can you be too generous? Yes, you can, but sometimes what you think is too generous actually leads to some benefits. And it depends on who you are. Can you be not generous enough? Why don't you ask all of the business clans in the city that don't pay any taxes? I'm sure they'll tell you what it's like to be not generous enough, and maybe they enjoy that. Okay, so virtue, I hope you're starting to get what virtue is. I think everybody understands it. But normally we think of it as something that people have or don't have. You don't really think of it as a skill that you can train. Aristotle thought it was a skill that you can train. You can be like, I'm going to try to be more generous. I'm going to try to be more courageous. I'm going to try to be more anything, humorous, right? It can be learned through experience. And we can learn it from moral exemplars by watching them, by reading about them, by trying to act like them. This is natural to humans because it's how we learn when we are really young. You're a little kid, you see what the older kids are doing, and you're like, oh, these older kids are cool. I want to act like them. We usually keep that into adulthood, and we see people, and we're like, oh, I like the way that this person is doing this. I want to do it like that because that's cool. That's good, right? But when we're not kids anymore, maybe we don't need to emulate what's cool, and we could emulate what's good instead. Okay, so eudaimonia is the quest for the good life, and this is trying to become the most virtuous, balanced, and ultimately excellent version of yourself. It's a very interesting version of ethics and how to live the good life. Hedonia was pleasure, right? The pursuit of pleasure. And eudaimonia is the search for meaning. So you can have a life that has none of this, which is very sad. Or you can have one that just has virtue all the time, and you're just meeting your requirements, you're getting all of your responsibilities done, but you don't have any happiness. Sometimes you got to do that, right? You could also be living a life where you have a lot of happiness, but you don't have any meaning. What I hope for you guys is the fulfilled life where you have both happiness and meaning. And I think you have to be quite wise to figure out how to get both. It's difficult. Not everybody gets it. Okay, but what about systems? We talked about virtue. Virtue is something that you have within yourself. You install that deep in your core, and it shines forth in all of your actions. And this is kind of the best way to build an ethical system because the system comes from within you. But there are also questions about how do you build a good society? And in building a society, you always have rules. If you look at Christianity, it has the 10 Commandments. Islam has something really similar. Buddhism has the Hakha, right? Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't engage in sexual misconduct, don't intoxicate yourself. Are these the most important parts of Buddhism, or are they the question of like, hey, we're a world religion, we have to tell people what to do in some way, usually in the form of, yo, don't do these things. Ethics has this too. Utilitarianism is one of the most famous examples of it, and it's something that we can feel in most of what we do. So we'll go into this as our first system. Is not a situation with virtues. Now, in politics, you often hear about the right and the left. And I think this is largely a Western thing, the right and left, right wing or left wing. And the question of what this means is kind of interesting. So over here, you've got Democrats on the left and Republicans on the right. And then to the right of the Republican is the libertarian. Libertarian believes in freedom. And one step beyond that, you have anarchy. Anarchy is no rules, no rulers. So libertarianism is one step in from chaos. And this is a system that has a very limited amount of rules. We'll talk about that today as well. Basically just protecting human rights and nothing more. Now, that is all well and good, but what about getting everybody health care and food when they need food? You start to get over here into the left. And the left starts to believe that you should, forget about this thing, but the left starts to believe that you should provide things for people who can't provide for themselves, such as food or housing sometimes. Often it's school or healthcare, right? And most ways of structuring a society have a mixed economy with a little bit of socialism built into it, even Thailand, right? So here's another version of the exact same thing. And we've got this awful symbol on the other side here. These are the Nazis, right? You have the anarchists now on the left. Now, this is a crazy situation where you try to put all of the politics on some line. It doesn't really work out that way, right? I think that when I first came to Thailand, I had such a hard time understanding politics just because I saw everything from this left and right sort of a point of view. And I didn't understand the idea that the military might be its own thing. And that when the business class tells the military to do something, the military is looking over at the business class and says, if you get any more silly, we're going to do another coup. You know, like this is not a left-right sort of a situation. This is multiple factions of power. And we'll talk about that another time. Enough of this politics. You see now that the anarchists are back over here. Communism is something that we'll have to talk about at some point. But in all of these situations, you can tell that it's Americans that have made this meme with the Republicans on the right and the Democrats on the left. And politics has so much to do with our ethical intuitions. Politics should be an expression of our ethics, just like our actions should be an expression of our virtue. What do you really believe inside of yourself is right? Do that. If authenticity is right. All right. So either we agree about how to measure something or it's politics. And in this situation, we don't really agree how to measure something. You can take the political spectrum compass and decide where you stand on the political spectrum and then enjoy all of the memes associated with that. But it's still not a definitive way of saying, hey, this is who you are politically. Okay, so utilitarianism. What is it? Look at this crazy word. Utilitarianism. Now, what's an ism and what is utility? So an ism is a system of belief, like Buddhism, capitalism, communism. What is an ist? Well, really, it's a person who believes in an ism. Isn't that simple? So utilitarianism says that the right thing to do will bring the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Where do we see this? The answer is everywhere. What is democracy? Democracy is where we vote and we do what most people say. Most people say they want to do this. We're going to do it then. Rule by most. A utilitarian is a person who follows utilitarianism. And you could also use the same word as an adjective if you want to add to your philosophy vocabulary. Now, where do we see utilitarianism? I would say that we see it in music all the time. If you go to Central World or something, you're not going to hear death metal. You're not going to hear crazy gangster rap. You're probably going to hear super, super soft pop music about love, because that's what most people want to hear. It's not what I want to hear, but I am in the minority. And with utilitarianism, if you're in the minority, sorry, but you don't matter, because utilitarianism tries to give the greatest good to the greatest number of people. It tries to help most people. And the people who don't get helped, well, sorry. The best that we can do is take care of most people. So what does this remind you of? The question of pleasure and pain and thinking about suffering, thinking about reducing the suffering of people. Buddhism, right? Buddhism looks at human suffering as the first step of their philosophy. The first noble truth in Buddhism is the recognition of suffering, the recognition of ill-being. The Buddha recommended that the first step to curing suffering is to understand the situation at its roots. This basically means to understand that all of us are suffering, even billionaires, even super athletes. Everybody is suffering. This is like fundamental to the human condition. And if you're going to make something that's for all humans, it's really good to figure out something that we all have in common. And this is something that we all have in common. We don't all like Taylor Swift, but we all do suffer, right? And some of us suffer when Taylor Swift comes on the radio. So life is suffering is the short version of this. Utilitarianism wants to fight against suffering by increasing pleasure and reducing pain. Does Buddhism do it the same way? No, definitely not, right? Can you see problems with wanting to increase pleasure and reduce pain? Maybe you can. I have a kid, and often my kid wants to eat sugar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if she eats sugar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, she will have more suffering later. She'll have happiness now, but she'll have suffering later. What's the relationship between pleasure now and pleasure later? This is a question that the utilitarians took seriously. You might argue not seriously enough, but let's look into what they do. This cat here is Jeremy Bentham. He was the inventor of utilitarianism, and he gave us ACT utilitarianism. And the other thing that he said was, the question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? And his thoughts started to move towards extending our ethical principles towards animals. And I think that in the way that we look back on all of the human rights problems that we've had for a long time, our grandchildren, like the very young generation that's not even born yet, are going to look at us and they're going to be like, I can't believe you ate animals. And we're going to say, hey, like, we didn't have the science food that you guys have now that just gives you everything perfectly every day. And you only have to eat a couple times per week for fun. We didn't have that. Be like, yeah, Grandpa, but you ate animals and you knew that animals were tortured to give you the protein needs that you need to, like, be strong when you're old. Is that really worth the suffering of that many animals? That's kind of horrible, Grandpa, right? This is what the holiday table argument is going to be about, right? Okay. So he also gave us ACT utilitarianism, and he said that you have to basically measure how much good every single action that you're going to take is going to do for people. You have to figure out the utility of each action. And he did this all the way up to his death. You might be looking at this picture and being like, what's up with this weird picture? This is his dead body that he put in his school to inspire his students after he died, because he thought that was the most utilitarian use of his body. Let's not throw it in the ground. Let's keep me here so that everybody can, look at me and get inspiration. What a crazy guy, right? And often his head was stolen by students. So that's Jeremy Bentham. And here's his calculus. He said, these are the sorts of things that we need to do to see what an action will do. How long will the pleasure that it creates last? How intense is it going to be? How near or remote? How widely an area is it going to cover? How probable is it? How free from pain is it? And will it lead to further pleasure? And these are all really good questions, right? If you are going to eat a big giant thing of ice cream after dinner, you're going to have happiness, but the first bite is going to be maximum happiness. And then bite number 10, you're like, oh yeah, I'm still eating ice cream, but I'm also thinking about whatever, and I'm scrolling on TikTok now. So it's not the same as the first bite. The first bite is where you get all the greatness. So, I mean, if you took utilitarianism seriously, you'd probably say, how about I get some ice cream and I put it in my freezer, And I'm going to eat breakfast. And then after breakfast, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to eat one bite of ice cream and be like, oh, that's so good. And then I'm going to leave and go to school. And then, maybe I eat lunch at home. I'm going to eat my lunch. And then afterwards, I'm going to eat another one bite of ice cream and be like, oh, that's so good. And then I'm going to leave. And then, after school, I'll be practicing. As soon as I get done practicing, I'm going to go eat one bite of ice cream. So you're always getting the first bite of the ice cream. So you're always getting maximum pleasure. And then after dinner, you just go eat one bite of ice cream and then go do whatever you're always getting that first bite. Wouldn't that be like maximizing pleasure all the time? Why don't we think like this? This is a very interesting way to think. And another one that I think is interesting is the question of whether or not pleasure leads to further pleasure. This is my favorite question. If you're playing music with a bunch of your friends and you're in some band and you're going to go play a bunch of shows, playing music with your friends is going to lead you to getting better at music that you play with your friends, that you go play with your friends more. It's the kind of pleasure that leads to more pleasure. You're getting better. Your musical project is getting tighter. You're learning more songs and everything. Like, it's a great kind of pleasure that has a lot of other things mixed into it. How free from pain is it? This one I can argue against a little bit, because let's say you're going to exercise. You're going to do a bunch of push-ups and pull-ups and whatever to make yourself strong. Well, that has pleasure and pain into it, but you see that it's going to lead to a lot of further pleasure, because as you do more and more of that, you get stronger and stronger, and the pleasure of being strong is good. Like I said before, when you're old, you're going to want to be strong, because it sucks to be weak when you're old. That means then you can't live your own life and you need somebody to take care of you. That's not any fun. You want to take care of yourself. So the problem with this is it's too much, right? You're always thinking about how to get more pleasure, and this is every action that you take. Hey, do you want to go get ice cream? Hold on, let me think. Because everybody who's involved in this is going to have all of these questions of pleasure involved and the future, right? How is this going to lead to pleasure in your future? That's a lot to consider of every single act. In comes John Stuart Mill, who gives us rule utilitarianism. And this is the idea that we should make rules that start to produce more pleasure along these spectra. How do we get more duration, intensity, propinquity, extent, certainty, purity, and fecundity in pleasure for all of the people that we possibly can? He would say by having rules and policies. And this is where John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham start to argue a little bit. You start to get the question between higher pleasures and lower pleasures. And he had the famous quote, "Is it better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied? Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied and it's a fool, or the pig is of a different opinion. It is only because they only know their own side of the question." Now, what does that mean? He basically said, if all you like is lower pleasures, you don't know what higher pleasures are. So what does that start to tell us about higher pleasures? It starts to tell us that maybe higher pleasures require education. Maybe they require talent. Maybe they require a little bit of intellectual work to enjoy. Now, think of rotting, right? Normally when you're rotting, you're laying there with your phone about 10 centimeters from your face, and you're blasting very quick, high dopamine, stupid videos into your brain. My dad, who I see every day now, is reading the classics. He's right now reading Charles Dickens. And this is a writer from a couple hundred years ago, one of the greatest of all time. Reading the classics is a higher pleasure, clearly. Rotting is a lower pleasure, clearly. You can get higher than reading the classics somehow, and you can get lower than rotting, and you're welcome to write about these things. But I think it's kind of obvious what they are, but I invite you to disagree. Do you believe in higher pleasures versus lower pleasures? This will be our last argument for the day. Think about this place. I'm not sure where it is, but you can tell that it is a piece of architecture that is designed for you to listen to the music that is being produced here. And think about the music that's being made. It's probably some of the greatest music of all time, because you don't do music in a room like this unless it's some of the greatest music of all time. Now, sometimes I would teach these classes in MACM, and there would be Concert Grand Steinway sitting there, and I would have an hour in between classes, and I'd be sitting in MACM playing piano. That would not be the greatest music of all time. I'm not a very good piano player, but God, that was amazing. I had such pleasure from doing that. That's somewhere between a higher pleasure and a lower pleasure. If any students came in and had to listen to me, I wouldn't say that that's a higher pleasure. Is the greatest music of all time played by a team of the greatest musicians in the world who had to fight so hard to get into there? Is it a higher pleasure than mumble rap? What's mumble rap? I'm not saying rap. I like rap. Right? I think that J. Cole is an amazing artist. He's a great producer. He's a great vocalist. He writes good lyrics. I like J. Cole. I like Kendrick Lamar. I think that he's brilliant. He's very interesting. The jazz guys that were on his album To Pimp a Butterfly is one of the best albums that I've heard in this century. It's amazing. I love Tupac. You go back to Tupac. I love Biggie Smalls. I love a lot of rappers. I think they're so awesome. Mumble rap, however, like this stuff, rap is just basically talking. And if you're mumbling, you're rapping, but you're not talking. You're not even talking, right? So these non-lyrical rappers, is that just straight up lower pleasure? Isn't it just bad? Or if you have somebody who's famous just for being cute, who is it that I don't like? Shawn Mendes. Shawn Mendes is, I would argue, would be a lower pleasure because he's got to be just famous for being cute. I used to rip on Justin Bieber, no longer, because I found out that the entire industry just found that it was awesome to abuse Justin Bieber. I don't want to be a part of that anymore. But the whole world just wanted to trash Justin Bieber. I don't know why. Maybe he was too cute and he got it, right? Taylor Swift, she's famous, she's happy, she can handle it. Haters gonna hate. Also, she's like the number one artist of the entire century. I have to criticize her. I don't even know who this guy is. He's been in my slides for a long time and I don't know who he is. I'm sure his first name is Lil. I'm also sure that he's terrible and that he's a lower pleasure, and that listening to mumble rap is a lower pleasure, and that listening to whatever music they're gonna play in this room, I don't care what it is, it's going to be a higher pleasure. And I'm not saying that all of this kind of music is good. It's not all, I don't like it all, right? And that's another question that I have for you. When you say, I like it, what are you saying? I like it. If you like it, then it's good. Sometimes I hear some Mozart and I'm like, man, this is some boring, cute music. It sounds like it's music for squirrels, and I'm not a squirrel, so I don't want to hear it. Sometimes I hear some music that's like a stupid rap song or like a stupid metal song or something, and I like it. I'm not saying it's good, but I like it. Evanescence would be my favorite example of something that's maybe not the best music ever made, but I really like Evanescence. I really like it. But I don't know that it's the best thing ever, right? Or sometimes I'll hear Paramore and I'll be like, oh, this is cool. I like this. But I don't know if it's good. I think I just like it right now. But mostly the things that I like are indeed very good because I'm an elitist. Do you believe in the difference between higher pleasures and lower pleasures? Now, our friend John Stuart Mill here thought that we should have rules that promote good things and don't necessarily promote bad things. And we can see this in our musical society because there's money for jazz and there's money for classical music. But I don't know if there's money for mumble rap. I don't know if there are mumble rap scholarships that a lyrical rapper would not be able to get because, oh, you're a lyrical rapper. No, this isn't for you. This is just for mumble rap. We need more of this horrible garbage, right? Your lyrics are poetic and amazing, and like your rhyme schemes are complex, and like your poetic devices are something that, you know, like I could teach in an English class. No, you're out. You got to be saying just, and your name needs to be Lil whatever, and you need to be just 100% swag and no content. That's what we need, right? No. What we usually have is we know that this is a little harder for people to get down with. We know that it's harder for people to make because it doesn't necessarily make money, but we want this to continue to exist because we know that it's good. It's a good art form. It's a higher pleasure. It's got value by itself. This is true of jazz. This is true of classical music. This is not true of mumble rap. Fight me. Fight me, right? So this is rule utilitarianism. And I argue, once again, that whatever is getting played in this room is a higher pleasure than whatever this dude is doing. You want to fight me? Please do. Fight in the comments. Is there a difference between the sentence, I like it, versus it is good? I like it versus it is good. I don't necessarily say that Taylor Swift is bad. I don't think that she deserves to be the greatest musician of the century. That's a little much, right? We've had 25 years of this century. The greatest musician to come about is Taylor Swift. I think that's a little much. But just straight up saying that she's bad, that's a little much. Saying I don't like her, oh, I'm very comfortable saying I don't like her because it's just a true statement. You put on some Taylor Swift, I'm like, ugh, turn it off. I don't feel this, right? But that's not a comment on whether or not she's good. When you start to compare her to somebody else and say, there's Taylor Swift and there's Ariana Grande, who's a better singer? Ariana Grande is a better singer. She's just better at singing in every single way. And I think I could argue that rather objectively. I'm not talking about my feelings so much. I'm just saying that Ariana Grande is just straight up better at singing than Taylor Swift is. You can argue that she writes cuter stuff that more people like. Yeah, she does write cuter stuff that more people like. I just don't like it. But about being good. You're a singing instructor and you're going to give one of them an A and one of them a B. Taylor Swift gets a B. Ariana Grande gets an A because it's about singing, right? Fight me. I'm trying to tell you that there's an objective nature to the truth of whether art is good or not. This is a little bit far from ethics, or is it? What should we hold up as a society as our art that we continue to create? For a lot of people, there's this project that peaked with Beethoven. And yes, it continues with new music. New music is awesome. But the project that led to the greatest music of all time that we see over at Prince Mahidol Hall, is there something inherently better about that because of all of the effort, the energy, the grandeur? Is there a fundamental difference between that and mumble rap? I think there is. Are you allowed to disagree with the teacher? You are allowed to disagree with the teacher. You're supposed to disagree with the teacher, you know, when you do, from your own heart, from your own position. What do you think? Do you believe in higher pleasures versus lower pleasures? And the easier version of this is going back to like, what's going to get you pleasure for a long time? Looking at beautiful people on the internet versus learning a more efficient way to practice your instrument. Which one is a higher pleasure? When you learn something that's going to help you practice, help you get better, help you get more talented and better at your art that you love, isn't that better than looking at beautiful people on the internet? Is looking at beautiful people on the internet a lower pleasure? I would argue that it is. I would say that looking at beautiful people in real life is a higher pleasure than looking at beautiful people on the internet. Why? I don't even know. I guess it would be because you always have access to your screen. And if your screen is always full of beautiful people, maybe you're ruining your ability to appreciate nature. Do you have a problem with this? Fight me, right? The whole point of everything I've been saying for the past 20 minutes is to get you to fight me, right? We will indeed circle back around to ethics in Ethics Part 3, and we will come back and cover the opposite of utilitarianism. If you remember, utilitarianism is the idea that the greatest thing to do is whatever is going to be the best for most people. Not everybody. You can't make everybody happy, but you can make most people happy. Libertarianism is going to be the opposite side of that coin, and we're going to cover that next time. And I hope to get into religions and what do religions give us in terms of ethics. And then we'll close it out. We'll have one more discussion, and then we'll move on to the last 3 lectures and then your final presentations, which I really look forward to. Those are always my favorite because you have no choice but to tell me what you think, and we get to have some good conversations. Any questions about those are welcome in the line group. The line group's the best way to ask questions because everybody benefits from your answer. What do you think about higher pleasures and lower pleasures? Please let me know in the forum, and I will see you next week for Ethics Part 3.
Peace.